a description of the patterns in the spiritual path through the lens of Marseilles Tarot Major Arcana. The Fall. The archetype of the soul who chooses to experience lifetimes on the physical plane. It is the metaphysical aspect of being. The soul lives through time and learns and grows, traversing numerous incarnations. The soul can experience 5 distinct phases or ages on the physical plane. Infant soul. In the early stages and early incarnations, it will focus on survival on the physical plane. The magician is the central archetype in this soul age. It has to create the basics and the basis for life. Baby soul focuses on structures such as family, bloodlines, clans, and the security of groups, including closed and/or tightly regulated religious groups. After learning about survival in the infant stage, the soul now wants to retain security. The main archetypes are the Empress, the Emperor, and the Pope. Young soul. Now that it feels secure, the focus is on the individual and individual exploration and accomplishment. I am the center of the universe. Me is the most important thing here, often at the expense of all else and all others. The main archetypes are the Emperor and the Chariot. Mature soul. Me has been fully explored in the young soul age. Now, the lover archetype kicks in, and the focus is on the relationships between individuals. Emotion and empathy are developed. We is more important than only me. You are like me, I am like you. Social maturity and human rights belong to this soul age. While creating and paying karma goes on since the beginning, here it becomes more and more emphasized. So, the Hermit becomes more active. Old soul. The focus is on being and the well-being of the whole. We and the whole are all one living organism. Unconditional love and being is what matters in this soul age. The Hermit is an archetype that souls access more and more as the soul ages. It acts as a transition from consciousness focused outward to inward, from the physical to the psychological. So, late mature souls and old souls focus from the Hermit all the way to the world. After a large number of lifetimes lived, old souls have activated all archetypes in the Major Arcana. However, in lifetimes when the goal is of a spiritual nature, archetypes 11 through 20 are the most active. Archetypes 11 through 20 concern the psychological aspects of the personality, with respect to spirituality. Archetype 21 represents that which is neither physical nor psychological, nor metaphysical, but the essence of being. We will now skip the archetypes concerned with physical or worldly experience, and will look into those which deal with the psychological aspects of spirituality. Justice. It has to be fair, or else the soul becomes restless and peace is disturbed. The greater the perceived injustice, the deeper the lack of peace. Thus this is the archetype of karma, cause and effect. The soul will seek the balance of justice, so it will endeavor to pay for its transgressions, and thus learn to live fairly towards others as well as ourselves. And the soul will demand to be paid if it suffered a transgression. The soul will likewise measure the success of its own achievements and wish to pay itself if a goal was not achieved or a plan was not executed. Justice is a law. It looks squarely at us and is ready to execute it, shown by the upright sword. Is the heart as light as a feather? As in the Egyptian story of Mat. If so, we move on to a new cycle in the Wheel of Fortune and can enter the kingdom of heaven. If not, we go back and set things right. The Hermit. the archetype of introspection, investigation, and assessment. The mind turns within and begins to analyze all that has gone on before and question what the whole business of incarnation is about, scrutinizing our choices and their consequences. The Hermit, in its simplest form, means to pay attention, meditate, be conscious. It is not an attainment, it is an action or state of awareness. The Hermit is looking at the card Justice, to his right. Has it been a fair experience? If so, at a particularly ripe time in the soul's journey, we move forward and skip to Strength. If not, we enter the Wheel of Fortune and come back to the Magician to pay, as well as receive, by allowing others to pay us, and do justice. The Hermit heralds and initiates the conscious spiritual path and can be said to be the initiator of spiritual work. The Wheel of Fortune. The archetype of repetition and cycles. We do not do things only once. If we fail in the embodiment of the previous archetypes, we will come back into incarnation, and do it again until satisfied with the result achieved. The soul's measure of success for a lifetime is shown by the card the Chariot. Have we done what we set out to do in this incarnation? If so, a new cycle may begin. If not, we may then repeat the plan. That is why Justice is right after the Chariot. Besides achievement, there is another prime mover of the wheel. We cannot escape the Wheel of Fortune until debt is paid. The Hermit and Justice with their natural wisdom make sure of that. The Sphinx figure holding the sword atop the Wheel of Fortune is Justice. Justice is touching the wheel and decides when to turn or when to stop it. The result of paying karma successfully and moving forward rather than cycling back, indeed is spiritual maturity, wisdom, integrity, and strength. Those are requirements to initiate the next stage in spiritual work. Strength. The strength to look at things as they are and the will to steer the ship in new directions and tame the beast our egos have become. After shifting the focus to a new cycle, Wheel of Fortune, Strength starts the series of the last 10 major arcana depicting the conscious spiritual path. In its legitimate manifestation, Strength embodies the concept of right action. That is, action that is aligned with genuine spiritual goals. The Lion is fire, creative power. While the Magician used his creative power, wand, to create experience on the physical plane, Strength will use that same power to withdraw energy from certain aspects of the ego and create psychological understanding, and open the doors to a new reality of being. It will do so with grace, as shown by how she handles the lion. This is not a fight, this is a path of fearlessness, love and compassion. With Strength, we begin a path with faith in spirit, which will end with the dissolution of the path into spirit itself. Strength also refers to spiritual efforts and spiritual work. Usually, that is a requirement and a preparatory condition for the arising of the insight or revelation depicted by the Hangman. And after the Hangman, as a supporting factor in the process described by the Death archetype. The Hangman. Mountains are not mountains. Rivers are not rivers. Valleys are not valleys. From the perspective of self-knowledge, the Hangman represents the first time the insight into our true nature occurs. It is called enlightenment in some traditions, or awakening in others. It is a moment of recognition or revelation. The Hangman has one central meaning. It represents the understanding that the ego as a creator of experience is non-existent. The mover of the universe is not personal, never was, and never will be. The person as the agent creator of experience is a figment of imagination. Along those lines, the Hanged Man embodies the understanding expressed in the Christian tradition, "Thy will be done." There is no individual personal will. In reality, there is only God's will. And there is no separation between self and God. That is the insight. The Hanged Man is suspended, supported by wands growing from the ground. Wands is the symbol of action, which shows that the acting power is not his. Any action that he performs in life is entirely dependent on a power broader than him as an individual. He is hanging by his foot. How much can he decide and choose without outside help? In the words of the Buddha, deeds are done but there is no door thereof. That is understood in the Hanged Man. The remarkable symbolism goes further. That realization is a major change in perspective in our view of life, ourselves, and spirituality, symbolized by him being upside down. Things are not what I thought them to be. And I am not what I thought I was. As the Eastern saying goes, mountains are no longer mountains and rivers are no longer rivers, all is consciousness, and I and the world are that. An awakening indeed. Near the point where the Hanged Man is tied to the top beam, we see an open circle with 3 lines in it. That represents the 3 fundamental facets of our true nature: love, truth, and beauty, which the Hanged Man has now had a deep taste of. He is now hooked. From now on he wants to go back to that spiritual realization of peace. The Hanged Man has now perceived his union with God. More specifically, he has realized that God and him are not two, or separate. Every knowledge, belief, or mystery pales next to what the Hanged Man knows in the depths of his being. However, the small open circle in the image is incomplete. This is only an insight into the unity and the fundamental trinity of the manifestation. It is not a living reality for the Hanged Man. The psyche and its habits of unresolved trauma, ignorance, and pain close the doors to this most sublime realization. A new approach must be taken. The circle will be completed later, at the end of the process of elimination, in the card, the world. The symbol of love, truth, and beauty is found in various of these cards, 3 dots, for example, indicating the presence of those 3 qualities in some of our experiences and states. The Hanged Man is an insight, a revelation, a very significant one. It is the beginning of the end of the spiritual path, because now we have been given a direct insight into the end of the path. The Hanged Man is an insight into the world, into our true one without a second nature, expressed primarily as 3: love, truth, and beauty. The Hanged Man is the archetype describing the first time the realization of our true self takes place in sufficient depth to cause a lasting impact on the psyche. This event will have ongoing repercussions in the spiritual seeker's life. It opens a crack of light in the mind which has the potential to never be shut again. Death. The clouds of the ego have closed in and left the painful impression that the love, truth, and beauty the Hanged Man knew are inaccessible. Fear, doubt, and confusion remain. All the egocentric suffering remains, to some degree or another, while the memory of the revelation remains beneath the suffering, shining its light into the psyche. It is now time to discriminate and eliminate the obstructions. The process of spiritual cleansing begins. The way of denial. Neti. Since the Hanged Man, what we are working for and what we have been seeking is understood directly, not only intellectually. It is understood that we are what is sought. We are not working for some state of metaphysical power, we are not striving to add something to ourselves or to improve ourselves. We are not attempting to create an immortal vehicle for the ego. The work is no longer aimed at personal achievement. The work now is to clear the psyche of weeds growing unconsciously in the dark ground. That is, clear it of misconceptions, fear, false beliefs, and imaginary spiritual goals. Death represents the removal and the insignificance of all symbols of identity, namely, the personality and the body. Thus the heads of kings and queens, and body parts lying on the ground. It is the removal of the belief in the imaginary picture of ourselves. It represents the discarding of all that is spiritually useless. This card does not have a name. Spiritually speaking, the symbol of not having a name points to the elimination of one's primary image of self. The card is telling us, you are not your name, your body, or the person behind the name. Abandon all symbols of self and find the real self. As the cleansing process continues, more and more is seen about the unconscious manifestations of duality, and the prison of distorted ideas and fear, which are what prevent a life lived in present peace and spiritual fulfillment. These unconscious manifestations are represented by the devil. Temperance. The outcome of the ongoing psychological cleansing and investigation into the nature of mental bondage is temperance. On one level, it is a desire, or the felt need, to balance life and have a sane internal world, thus the flow between the cups in the hands of one single angelic creature. It is the minimization of energy leaks. It is the conservation of energy. We aim at recognizing and correcting fundamental distortions in the psyche which naturally produces more harmony in life. The middle way, as they say. The process of psychological healing is underway. Now we can take on heavier tasks on the path. And they shall come. The devil. The devil is the archetype of self-inflicted suffering, ignorance, and attachment. It represents a modus operandi of the human mind. What perpetuates the suffering is the habitual unconscious approval of those bound to the devil. The card shows the people are not fighting the devil, they are passively subject to the ties with their hands behind their bodies. The devil represents mind activity, negative emotions, and attachment that supports psychological suffering. At the root of its manifestation is the belief that we are a vulnerable self that must be protected at all costs. Its root is fear. In this mode of operation, we are ignorant of our true self. From that perspective, in terms of what to do about this predicament, the only final antidote to the devil's grip is the judgment. Pay attention to the true self. The devil holds people by leashes around their necks, and the people have tails. That is, self-identification with the body is perpetuated. The devil has horns and the people have horns, emphasizing the intellect and the resonance among them, like antennas sharing the same signal. The devil displays two tongues, one on the head, intellect, and one on the belly, instinct, and the people display large ears. Traditionally, the devil speaks to us. That is, it uses language and intellect, and we are sure to hear it when it speaks. The devil stands on a pedestal rooted in darkness representing the unconscious, as do the people who listen to him, by clawing at the black patch on the ground. While the emphasis is on self-inflicted suffering, the root of such a state is to be found in ignorance. Ignorance of the nature of the psyche and its workings. Thus the need to study and understand the psyche. Ultimately, it is ignorance of our true self. The Tower. Despite the faith in the sanity we have been developing on the spiritual path, not all is roses. Our inability to change the psyche's habits at will, during certain crossroads, leads us into cul-de-sacs or dead alleys, and we may get stuck in our path. For the majority of us, there is no other way to move forward on the path without some external intervention. While the devil represented suffering we cause to ourselves through ignorance, the tower is suffering that life throws at us. This is the tower archetype. Named the house, God, from the French. The building is the house, us as body and personality. The blow to the roof is God. Some external event comes our way and shakes the prison walls and shatters the prison roof so light gets in. It could be an accident, a divorce, an illness, losing one's job, the death of a loved one, a stock market crash, whatever. The bottom line is that it is not self-created, it comes from the outside. It is a slap on the wrist from God. Pay attention. It is time to renew. It is often a painful gift that may propel us deeper into the path of spiritual realization. In many cases, it is a tower archetype event that triggers the Hangman's revelation in the first place. The blow from God is symbolic of the love that creates such destruction in our lives. Thus it is by no means to be taken as a dark influence. Destruction is an integral part of the spiritual path. What is false is destroyed, with love. And then, if we are lucky to assimilate the episode without lingering resentments against such a god or his pawns, we leave the tower through the door, otherwise, it is more like falling out through the window. Note the symbol of 3 on the door. We leave the prison through love, truth, and beauty. There will be as many towers in our lives as necessary to obliterate the grips of the devil. The star. Painful events, as brought about by the tower, if appropriately digested and assimilated, lead us into a state of peace, humility, and harmony with the world's duality. There is no fear and there is fluidity, and those qualities begin to stabilize, shown by the 3 stars, love, truth and beauty, among 4 stars indicating stability. Life is no longer limited by the shackles of the devil, it is now guided by a star shining from within, throughout the psyche. We are now naked, symbolizing vulnerability, but with fearlessness, as a healthy and sane human being. We are firm with one knee on the ground, but not static. We are ready to respond to the requirements of life. Thus the right knee is up, poised for movement. We are aware of divinity as the central star shows above. We pour our energy, as the 2 pitchers of water show, wherever is needed. We are interacting with the world through acceptance and courage, and manifesting our virtues. We are in a state of creativity and receptivity, a feminine state. Earlier in the path, fear was the norm, and moments of enlightenment came and went, and did not last. Now light is the norm, and fear may come and go, and it does not last. The moon. But alas, there may be still disturbing forces at play. These forces may come from traumatic experiences in the past bleeding into the present experience via memory. Or they may be due to present, legitimate experiences of pain. Unresolved unconscious traumatic experiences early in this lifetime, or previous lives may impinge upon the present experience, bringing that pain back and generating new pain. These experiences may be physical or emotional. The 2 animals, like every card in this series, describe the presence of duality and the pendulum between the opposites within manifested existence. Furthermore, it is emphasized here that each side contains the seed of its opposite, shown by the shared colors between the animals, like the Eastern yin-yang symbol. The card emphasizes the emotional factor in the experience of pain. It hurts. And there is a healthy, wise, and sane way to deal with it. And there is its opposite. The moon's face on the card is one of hardship and acceptance. Consciously processed pain leads to wisdom and peace. In the image, we see the moon and the sun behind it. It is the image of an eclipse. That is, if there are unacknowledged and undigested hurtful emotions lurking, be them from the past or present, they will tend to produce an experience of obscuring our peace and the light that never stops shining behind it, in our very core. Light is needed to illuminate the dark corners where these emotions and our present reaction to them arise from. Pain is natural. Facing pain and fear is the price for the reward of fearlessness and peace. We need the sun. The sun. The light of consciousness and love comes into being to continue revealing the unseen roots of suffering, promote understanding and compassion, and engender a deep acceptance of what is. The sun may come into our lives through a person we meet, a book, a spiritual teacher, a friend, meditation, tarot, a spiritual guide, and so forth. The light shines and healing is promoted until it constantly shines spontaneously from within. This wise and loving energy heals the pain. This is shown by how the happy figure on the right holds and guides the traumatized-looking figure on the left. The figure on the left has a tail, showing that it carries residual energy from the devil and thus is still subject to psychological suffering. Notice the 3 dots on the happy figure's torso, the symbol of the natural trinity of love, truth and beauty. That is what is imparted in their contact, inviting the figure on the left to leave the emotionally turbulent waters it stands in. To leave its identification with the body and its history and stand on the peaceful ground. And then, in turn, give and spread love and wisdom freely, as the sun must naturally do. The Judgement. From a spiritual path point of view, the judgment represents the moment the sense of being a separate self is removed. Self-imagination is dissolved. Some call this meditation, some call it self-inquiry, or self-remembering, some call this non-meditation, surrender, or grace. It does not matter the name or the tradition, or if an effort is required or not. This is an event that engenders the dissolution of the sense of separation. The blue figure represents a cleansed ego rising from a tomb. This ego does not claim to be separate from the whole, nor does it claim to be one with the whole. The compulsion to make any self-related claims is removed. In the judgment we are being told by an angel playing a horn in our faces, go back to what you already know you are. In essence, this is the same realization present in the Hangman. However, then, it was a total surprise, we were caught off guard. We had been serious spiritual workers, but we had no clue about what we were working for. We were working to save the ego from death, no matter how well disguised the intent was. We had been sincerely working in ignorance and in the dark. After the Hangman we began working toward the goal of self-realization. In the judgment, all spiritual goals and the desire for enlightenment dissolve entirely. Here, the path ends. The world. The archetype, the world, being the end of the sequence, depicts the self as it manifests freedom and peace, in the presence of the 4 elements, and the experience of duality, which can be said to be the goal of spirituality on the physical plane. Nothing has been added to us, something has been removed. The imagination of self and the belief of being a separate entity has been removed. Here the ego, the human figure in the center, lives in harmony with the whole, be it in pleasure or in pain, as a body and personality that were acquired in this lifetime, in the absence of the claim of separation which caused so much restlessness and unnecessary suffering before. The ego is not dissolved, the personality and body persist as the mental construct and perceptual experience that they are. What is dissolved is a particular quality of the ego which manifested as the sense of separation from the whole. The world is not a relative state that comes and goes. The world is not something that was lost and then recovered. The world is not the last step on an individual's path. It is not a spiritual achievement. The world represents the ever-present reality before, during, and after the path. a non-dual wholeness manifesting quietness, warmth and simplicity that is equal to our true self, the self we have never ceased to be. Or simply, consciousness. Marseilles Tarot Major Arcana tells the story up to the point that is realized in our daily lives, and we live again at peace. Mountains are again mountains. Rivers are again rivers, and valleys are valleys. Nothing is wrong anymore.